7:35 right now. A rare move by New York City's Rent Guidelines Board could lead to a reprieve for 2 million people living in rent-stabilized apartments.
Yeah, the board is now set to vote next month on lowering rent increases for the 2-year leases. Public Advocate Jumaane Williams welcomes the move but continues to call for a rent freeze. And Public Advocate is joining us this morning to explain his position. So good to see you, Mr. Williams.
Good morning. Good morning.
So let's talk about this. It's a revote, right, by the Rent Guidelines Board. It's a promising sign. It's rare that they actually go about with these revotes. But can you explain what exactly the 1% means, right? Shaving off 1% and how that would kind of still average out for the renter?
You know, I think it's a move. You have to say a good move, but it's by degree and not a big degree. And so the top charge can still have renters paying almost $250 extra a month. That's $3,000. Where are people going to find that money? The wages are not keeping up. So we're still really quite concerned about the change, and we're quite concerned about the range that they set. So they make it seem like they do something great if they go on the lower end. The fact of the matter is people can't afford $150 extra a month, and that's part of the problem. We may be facing the third highest rent increase in Eric Adams' Rent Guidelines Board in the past 20-something years. And this is a huge problem, increasing homelessness and housing stability for folks.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, though, what do you say to the landlords, though? The landlords we spoke with say they need between a 6% and 7% increase to keep up with rising costs.
So what often happens...
Our property tax bills go up 8% or more year over year. The Water Board is currently voting on a 3.7% water increase. We're seeing Con Ed raise their rates by 11%, proposing another increase next year. The process itself is unfortunately broken.
Sorry, I didn't mean to give that abrupt soundbite, but how do you respond to the landlords?
Oh, no problem. There are landlords that need assistance. What often happens is they'll put some of the landlords, particularly the smaller owners, in the front because they're both most sympathetic stories. They're all the larger landlords who don't need that type of assistance. And there are two things. One, we have to get government to step in because tenants literally can't have the burden of trying to fix all of the problems. The landlords go to the tenants. Where do the tenants go to? You can't squeeze money out of them, so you increase the homelessness. What we have been pushing for a long time is to have separate conversations so that everybody's not painted with a broad brush. But if you're going to do that, you cannot keep raising the rents on people who can't afford it. And I will add this, we have seen an increase in rent, but not a better housing stock. And so that means the housing stock is getting worse, even as the rents are going up. So let's split and have different conversations and also have government step in to assist those landlords who need this assistance.
So why hasn't that happened yet?
Well, up until now, this is the first time I've heard one of the landlord organizations agree that we may need a separate conversation. But they've always rejected that conversation. They've always rejected, let's have a separate conversation, because I think they like the opportunity to have the more sympathetic folks in the front. Also, the state has to step in because it's governed by some of the state laws. Yeah. But what happens is everybody points to each other and say, we can't help. And in a silo, we're harming New York.
So I spoke to the head of the tenant association, right? And he was telling me about how some of these buildings are just so in disrepair because they can't keep up with the demands. Now, I know you have that worst landlord list, right? And then they're afraid that they end up on it because they can't make the repairs. So what do you say to the folks? I know you're talking about the sympathetic ones, and there's some folks who are looking to make money off of this altogether. But the buildings are in such bad shape. Is what you're proposing just the better solution? Would it work to fix the buildings?
We absolutely need government to step in if there are buildings in total disrepair, like your suggestion. But I would say the vast majority of folks who get on our list, it's not because the rents weren't enough. It's because they made decisions to try to capture as much money as possible.
Okay.
But we do want to make sure that we're assisting the buildings who need assistance. But what we've learned is you just can't ask tenants to pay $300 more. They will end up homeless. They will end up housing unstable, and that's not helpful for anyone.
All right. And again, the final vote's on June 25th. Quickly, are there public hearings before that?
I think there are some more hearings. There definitely is a final vote.
Okay.
We're going to obviously be there and ask people to be there as well. But I want to say it's not if everybody's unhappy we did a good thing. It's not because what we have been doing is increasing homelessness and the housing stock is getting worse.
Okay. We want to move on quickly to congestion pricing, which lives to see another day. Here we go again, a deja vu. After a federal judge, though, blocked the Trump administration's move to kill the toll. So you did a 5-borough transit tour yesterday. What did you hear from commuters?
We did, and one, people don't want the federal government, Donald Trump, taking money from the transit system. That is the biggest takeaway that we heard. We also put out a report that showed that, congestion pricing, one, is actually gaining in popularity, and two, it's actually working. We do want to see some tweaks, and that's important, but it is working. And people don't want Donald Trump stopping money from coming into the transit system.
What kind of tweaks?
One, we want to make sure that lower income New Yorkers are getting a better assistance. There are some places like the Queensboro Bridge where people are being unnecessarily tolled. So we want to see some of those things changed. But people in the system were very clear about the unreliability. That is the biggest issue, whether it is trains that are coming late, buses that are bunched together, or maintenance that seems to be eternal and never ending. And funding can assist those things. And they don't want Donald Trump holding our transit system hostage for decisions that we made locally, and that funding can really help with those things. We did hear some conversations about security. That was probably the second thing that we heard. But the number one thing was reliability.
So this ruling is temporary, though. So quickly, what happens next?
Well, we know that they legally cannot force anyone to stop this. But what they can do is try to hold us hostage to take money that will make the system better. That makes no sense at all. And that's what we heard from people who were in that system. We took the ferry, we took City Bike, we took the train, and we took the bus. And so we have to keep standing tall. And I'm glad to see the MTA took Donald Trump and the federal government to court. We have to keep going to court. We have to keep holding strong because we're winning. They're actually wrong. Holding money from the transit system does not make it better. It would only make it worse.
Got to leave it there. Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, thank you for your time. I know you're not feeling that great, so feel better, okay?
Appreciate it. Hopefully the Knicks make me feel better in the next game.
Yes, please. From your lips to God's ears. Thank you.
All right, 7:42, everybody.